Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajaka Charja Sato Sata Shri Shriman's Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajaka Charja Asatar Sata Shri Shriman His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Shri Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dhamma Ki Jai Shri Maya Pradam Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glorious you assembled devotees, all glorious you assembled devotees, all glorious you assembled devotees, all glorious to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. So Hare Krishna. They say if you name your feelings, you contain them. I'm nervous as anything. So thank you all for your kind attention. I just thought maybe I would introduce myself, because the other day I was sitting in class and there was a Maharaj giving class, and I turned to the lady beside me and I said, "Who's that?" She goes, "I don't know." I turned the other way. "Who's that?" "No idea." And about halfway through the class, he started saying he was from New Mayapur, France. I thought, "Oh, that's Janananda Maharaj." I just put the two and two together. And because we had mentored some couples there and they'd spoken so kindly of him, it gave me a connection. And it was really nice to, I don't know, it made the hearing deeper, just because I had some way to connect with him. Because the goal of Krishna consciousness is that we want to, connect with each other so we can get the blessings of the Vaishnava so that we can connect with Krishna. So my name is Uttama Devi Dasi, and this is my good husband Partha Das, and we were initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1973. We live in the devotional rural community of Sharanagati Dham in Western Canada, which is, just one of the suburbs of the UK, across the pond. And we are fortunate to have the service of serving with the Grihastha Vision team. And we are here just to do some trainings for increasing effectiveness of relationships. So thank you very much for being here so I could come and visit you. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So today we are continuing with the module Leela chapter 8, the talks between the Lord and Ramananda Roy. So we are going to read verses 231 to 239. Text 231. Unless one follows in the footsteps of the gopis, that's 230. 231, the unspoken example, well, I'll just read it because it flows better. Unless one follows in the footsteps of the gopis, he cannot attain the service of the lotus feet of Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj. If one is overcome by knowledge of the Lord's opulence, he cannot attain the Lord's lotus feet, even though he is engaged in devotional service. Text 231. The unspoken example in this connection is the goddess of fortune who worshipped Lord Krishna in order to attain his pastimes in Vrindavan. But due to her opulent lifestyle, she could not attain the service of Krishna in Vrindavan. 232. This is a quote from Bhagavatam 10:47-60. When Lord Sri Krishna was dancing with the gopis in the Rasa Leela, the gopis were embraced around the neck by the Lord's arms. This transcendental favor was never bestowed upon the goddess of fortune or the other consorts in the spiritual world, nor was such a thing ever imagined by the most beautiful girls in the heavenly planets, girls whose bodily luster and aroma resemble the beauty and fragrance of lotus flowers. And what to speak of worldly women who may be very, very beautiful according to material estimation. Text 233. After hearing this, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Ramananda Roy, and both of them, embracing shoulder to shoulder, began to cry. 234. The entire night was passed in this way, in ecstatic love of Godhead. In the morning, they both departed to tend to their respective duties. 235. Before departing from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramananda Roy fell to the ground and caught hold of the Lord's lotus feet. He then spoke submissively as follows. 236. Sri Ramananda Roy said, "You have come here just to show me your causeless mercy. Therefore stay here for at least 10 days and purify my polluted mind. 237. But for you, there is no one who can deliver all the living entities, for you alone can deliver love of Krishna. 238. The Lord replied, having heard about your good qualities, I have come here. I have come to hear about Krishna from you, and thus purify my mind. And 239. Yachi shunilam taiche dekilum tomara mahima. Radha Krishna prema rasa gyanera tumi sima. Yachi sunilum taiche dekilum tomara mahima. Radha Krishna prema rasa gyanera tumi sima. Anyone, please? Radha Krishna prema rasa gyanera tumisima. Ladies? Radha Krishna prema rasa gyanera tumisima. Dekilum tomara mahima. Radha Krishna prema rasa gyanera tumisima. Yaiche, as much. Shunilun, as I have heard. Taiche, that much. Dekilun, I have seen. Tomara Mahima, your glories. Radha Krishna Prema Rasa Gyanera, of transcendental knowledge about the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. To me, you, Sima, the ultimate goal. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Now that I have actually seen your glories, what I heard about you is confirmed. As far as the pastimes of Radha and Krishna in a loving mood are concerned, you are the limit of knowledge. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu found Ramananda Roy to be the best authority in transcendental knowledge of the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. In this verse, the Lord actually states that Ramananda Roy was the limit of this knowledge. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishnavastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastyata Deshatarane Mukam karoti vachalam pangam langayate girim yet kripatamam vande Shri Gurum dinataranam Vanchakalpataruscha kripasindhuvyevata patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So here, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's expressing his gratitude to Ramananda Roy. He had previously heard from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya how exalted Ramananda Roy was. And now that he's experienced it, and he's just so satisfied to have been able to hear from such a person. In fact, in some verses previously, he had stated that he'd never before heard some explanations like this from anyone else. And so he was very, very grateful. And Srila Prabhupada mentions here how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described Ramananda Roy as Tumi Simha, the limit of knowledge. So this was, what's been happening is a conversation between the two of them about the goal of life. And so previously in the conversation, Ramananda Roy had explained that the gopis are the most dear to Krishna because they don't have even a pinch of let me just move this, desire for their own sense gratification. So we actually need to perk up our ears when we hear this, because that is the reason why the gopis in Srimati Radharani are so dear to Krishna. So we need to understand that we are happy when we try to make others happy. We have some kind of sometimes a misconception about how love develops, even love for God. We may think that love develops, you start to love someone when they serve you, but it's actually the opposite. So you see, say, a mother, they have great love for their child. And it's not that, every day the child's saying, "Oh, thank you, Mommy, for making me do my homework. Thank you, Mommy, for making me clean my room." You just get grumbles. But because you're serving with love, you develop love, and you develop a strong, loving attachment to your children. So in the same way, love develops by service. And we see that when we very nicely serve Sri Sri Radha Gokulananda, you develop a great attraction and attachment to them. So we see that, love develops by service. And we feel love when we give love. So I could say to my husband, "Oh, I'm not really feeling love. Here's a big long list of things you can do for me, and then maybe I'll feel like I love you." So if he did all these things on my love list, and I didn't reciprocate in any way, I wouldn't actually feel that love. Maybe if I was a narcissist, I might get a little, puffed up or something, but we don't feel love unless we give it. So if we're not feeling ecstatic in Krishna consciousness, it's time to serve a little more, read a little more, do something for the Krishna, and then we will start to feel that love. So sometimes in the material world, this might feel a little bit scary, that I'm just supposed to give. Because in the material world, most people's attitude is to take. So if the reciprocation isn't there in that loving exchange, we might perceive it as maybe abusive. It's just one way. We're doing all the giving and nobody gives back. and maybe even we might feel manipulated. But we see that the gopis don't feel this at all, because there's that loving reciprocation. The more they give, the more Krishna gives. And we want to be very careful that we don't preach a misapplication of the philosophy that we're supposed to just serve, serve, serve in absolutely any circumstance when the reciprocation isn't properly there. Because that's not a spiritual dynamic. The spiritual dynamic is when I give, the person reciprocates back. And so in material consciousness, the relationships are sometimes just what we can get. So we want to develop this actually selfless service attitude for Krishna. And we can feel very safe in that because we see how Krishna so nicely reciprocates. Krishna says that if I think that somebody, he said, my devotees are so dear to me, that if somehow or other I felt that my arm was doing some harm to a devotee, I would cut off my arm. He has like such reciprocal mood in his relationships. So once Srila Prabhupada described that the gopis, they serve so selflessly, they don't even think if they're going to get anything in return. But that Krishna is so grateful that he imposes enjoyment upon them in the reciprocation. Because of that nice, he's just so grateful. So we want to develop that attitude that when we serve, we're not serving others for personal benefit, and that we're not serving Krishna for our own personal benefit. Because the definition of pure devotional service is anyabilasya sita sunyam gyanakarmadyanavritam anukulena krishnanu shilanam bhaktirutamam. That devotional service has to be unmotivated and uninterrupted in order to completely satisfy the self. So we were just reading here how Lakshmi Devi, she also wanted to experience these wonderful exchanges, but she wasn't quite able to enter into it because she had still some personal attachment to her opulences, and so she couldn't enter the rasa dance. And this verse, Anyabilasa Sita Sunyam, it's describing also that we don't want to have any material desires, and we don't want to be served with any type of contamination from gyan, monistic philosophy, or fruitive reciprocation with Krishna. And so today is the disappearance day of Murari Gupta. And when I begin to share some of his pastimes, you'll understand that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very, very much condemned mixing pure devotional service with gyan and karma. Because Krishna wants our full surrender. Full surrender means it's no longer about me, not even one drop. And that's what we learn from Radharani. How happy that she and Krishna are by these loving exchanges that don't have these motivations. And so that's our path back to Godhead, that we are able to serve, without these material motivations. And it can't be artificial, because as soon as it's artificial, it means it's still about me. I'm just kind of putting it on. It's like, what am I going to get from it? So It's only on the pure spiritual platform that we can actually attain this platform where everything's truly about Krishna. One of the previous verses was saying that Radharani has absolutely no pinch of material desire, and that is only possible on the 100% spiritual platform. So when we gradually come to that platform, and we come to the point where we have no material desires, then we'll actually be in the spiritual world. And that's how we could become liberated, even in the self-same body. It's by having no material desires, just wanting to please Krishna. So we see that the quality of our relationships with others also reflects the quality of our relationship with ourselves. Because sometimes we hear that, oh, what about me? You know, you have to have self-love and all that. It's true. But it naturally happens when you serve in the right mood. So when you can only serve Krishna in an unmotivated way, when you're actually okay with yourself and your position with Krishna and how you're engaging in devotional service. So it automatically happens that when you serve Krishna purely, you'll naturally become a balanced person. And you won't have to so much worry about yourself because you will automatically know how to balance everything in the right way. So spiritual life is not about enjoyment. It's about connection. You know, we hear bhakti yoga. Yoga means to link, to connect. How to devotionally connect with God. And nothing else will actually satisfy us. They have all these abilities to do brain scans and this and that. And neuroscience now tells us that we are wired to connect. So we knew that. But, you know, it can actually even be proven by scans of your brain that human beings are wired to connect. And so really we're wired to connect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so in this material world we have to figure out how again to reconnect that lost connection, and then we'll be happy. So today we were beginning the Kartik celebrations. And the month of Kartik is actually derived from the name of the mother of Srimati Radharani, Kirtika. And just as Srimati Radharani is so dear to Krishna, so this month of Radharani's is also very dear to Krishna. And we read and understand that any little bit of devotional service that we do, by the blessings of Srimati Radharani, become magnified, and we can derive more benefit. So it's very beneficial to add a little something extra in this month so we can get a little extra mercy. So sometimes people make a vow that every single day they will offer a lamp and sing the Damodar prayers, or maybe we might decide that, oh, I'll read one chapter of Bhagavad Gita in the month of Kartik, or anything. Just some little thing so that we can increase our attachment to Krishna and Srimati Radharani, so that we can get her blessings, that we can progress nicely in devotional service. And also this month of Damodar, this pastime of Damodar Leela in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's a big shift in the mood of Bhagavatam right at this point. Because previously in the Bhagavatam, there had been the supremacy of Krishna had always been acknowledged. Devahuti acknowledged Kapila was the Supreme Lord. Aditi is acknowledging that her son Vamana is the Supreme Lord. And only even all the other incarnations of the Lord, yes, they're the Supreme Lord. In the beginning of Krishna's Leela, he's actually even showing his supremacy and his power as God by using his power of his hands to strangle Trinavarta, or the power of his feet to knock over the cart, or his mouth to suck out the life air from Putana. But when it comes to the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, just before the Damodar Leela, there's what is known as the Paribhasya Sutra of the 10th canto. And that is the 45th verse of the 8th chapter of the Bhagavatam, where just after Krishna eats dirt, and Mother Yashoda looks in his mouth, and she's starting to see, oh my gosh, maybe my son is God. She goes, no, can't do it. Just can't go there. There's no way I'm going there. This is just my son. And she's convinced, this is my son. And so the verse states that the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are studied throughout the three Vedas, the Upanishads, the literatures of Sankhya Yoga, and other Vaishnava literature, yet Mother Yashoda considered that the Supreme Personality of Godhead was her ordinary child. And then you see the whole mood of Bhagavatam switches, where Krishna's being submissive to his mother, and his pastimes with the gopis. There's no way they're thinking that he's God. So this month is very instructive for those finer sentiments of the pastimes with Krishna and his devotees, and how just having that unalloyed service attitude for Krishna is what we're all looking for, and it's what Krishna's looking for from us. So today is also the disappearance day of Murari Gupta. And it's so wonderful that you have Hanuman on the altar here, because Murari Gupta is a 100% incarnation of Hanuman. And he was a very glorious associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And his name is Murari Gupta. Gupta means hidden. So it's not so well known how close an associate he actually is with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He may appear to be an ordinary householder who happens to have the occupation of an Ayurvedic doctor. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said that he's called Murari Gupta because Krishna is Gupta in his heart, hidden in his heart. Krishna's always there in his heart. And we even know from the pastimes of Hanuman that he could even prove it. He could open up his heart and there's the Lord right in his heart. Right? So it is said that Murari Gupta actually had great compassion for everyone, and that anyone who he came in contact with was healed both spiritually and materially. So Murari Gupta, his birthplace was actually in Bangladesh, in a village of Sri Hata, and his parents were very distinguished Ayurvedic doctors also. But when Murari Gupta was young, his whole family moved to Navadvip. And I believe he got there even before the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he was a very young child, and he's maybe 6 years older than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's whole pastimes in Navadvip, Murari Gupta was present. And he was just enough older that he was, ahead in his studies. And so even just like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became a scholar from a very young age, so did Murari Gupta. So Murari Gupta was walking along, and he had some students, and they're not talking about what the latest movie was they watched, right? They're talking about what they read in the scriptures, how they can open up the learning in different ways and understand it from different angles, and they're getting great excitement from this conversation. So Murari Gupta is walking along with his students, and he's explaining the Yoga Sutras. And Nimai was walking behind him. And probably all you gentlemen remember this stage of life where you just imitate, right, adults, and you think it's fun. You just, like, if they're walking, you walk with an exaggerated gait behind them, and they say something, and you kind of like mimic it back. So this is what Nimai was doing. If Lord Chaitanya was, if Murari Gupta was saying, you should study this very thoroughly, Nimai would go, you should study this very thoroughly. And then they would say something else, and he would say, and not only that, but you should do this and that. And he was just mimicking him and exaggerating his gait. And so Murari Gupta, he turned around and he said, you're supposed to be the son of a Brahmin, and you're supposed to be sober. You're supposed to be the son of a Brahmin and be sober. And he said, why don't you just go somewhere else? Why don't you go somewhere else? And I don't know how Murari Gupta kept his cool, but somehow or other, Nimai said, I will come visit you tonight and show you something extraordinary. And he just disappeared. So Murari Gupta went along with his students, and he didn't really think much of it. And he went home, and he sat down to take his lunch. And all of a sudden, the door opens, and someone walks in. And Nimai actually disguised himself a little bit. Murari Gupta wasn't sure that it was Nimai. He kind of thought it was, but he was dressed in this beautiful silk dhoti, and his hair was done somehow in 3 knots that looked absolutely gorgeous, and he had pearl necklaces and really nice Tulsi beads. And he came in and he says, Murari, just sit where you are, eat your lunch. I'll just, wait for you. And it was a young boy, so Murari just, kept eating his lunch. And Nimai just very quietly took a step closer, and a step closer, and a step closer. And suddenly he was just standing right above Murari, and he urinated in his rice. And Murari Gupta jumped up and said, what are you doing, Nimai? And he said, I've come to teach you. First of all, Murari goes, shame on you, what are you doing? He said, I've come to teach you. And he started dancing around the room gleefully. He said, if you want to attain devotion to Krishna, it cannot be mixed with jnana and karma. Why are you preaching these yoga sutras? He said, as soon as anything is mixed with Gyan and karma, and anyone has any materialistic ambition, it's like mixing Mahaprasad with urine. So a pretty graphic teaching there. And then he just disappeared. And Murari Gupta went, who was that? I'm sure it was Nimai. And he ran to Jagannath Mishra's house. And there was Nimai in his normal, ordinary clothes, sitting on the lap of his parents, and they were hugging him and kissing him. And Murari Gupta just ran in and fell down flat, offered obeisances to Nimai. And Jagannath Mishra says, what are you doing? You're a distinguished Brahmin, older than him. Why are you offering him his obeisances, your obeisances? And he says, you have no idea who your son is. And so he just went away. He said, I think he did say, he said, your son is a supreme Lord, and he has come to benedict the world. and he left. But then Yogamaya covered him, and he forgot. So he got to be Murari Gupta got to be Nimai's friend again. So later on, when Nimai got a little bit older, and he was around 16, and he was playing the role of a pundit, he took this phase of life because Lord Chaitanya wanted to destroy the false pride that sometimes scholars had. Because he understands, just like Queen Kunti's prayers, Janmaishvarya Shruta Shribi Edamana Puma Puman, that if one sometimes has too much opulence, too much knowledge, too much beauty, one can get overly absorbed in it and think that's me and I'm the greatest, and become puffed up. So at this time in Navadvip, scholarship was the topmost attainment. If you were a good scholar, you had the most prized possession, more than beauty or wealth. It was scholarship. But unfortunately, people were becoming a little bit proud of it and forgetting about their relationship with the Supreme Lord. So Nimai took this phase of his life as a pundit to be able to go in and destroy the false pride of the scholars. And so he would try to engage anyone he saw in debate. And Murari Gupta would always try to ignore him when he wanted to engage in a debate with him. But one day, Nimai just taunted Murari. And he said, "Why are you studying Sanskrit grammar? You're a doctor. Why don't you go home to your leaves and vines and herbs? You're not going to find anything about mucus bile and indigestion in the, grammar. Why are you reading this?" And he said, "Why don't you just go home and cure the sick? Why are you studying Sanskrit grammar? That is the pinnacle of knowledge." And Murari, being Hanuman's also a partial incarnation of Lord Shiva. And he could actually get quite angry if he needed to. But he kept himself calm. And he said, "Nimai, why are you taunting me like this?" He said, Nimai asked him, "What are you studying today?" So Murari told him. And Nimai just completely defeated everything that he said. But Murari Gupta was such a scholar, he turned around and he defeated Nimai. And then Nimai defeated Murari Gupta, and then Murari Gupta, back and forth. And Lord Chaitanya was so pleased with him that he said, I don't know if he said anything, he was just so pleased with him that he touched his body. And when Murari Gupta felt the touch of Nimai on his body, he just felt ecstatic waves of love of Godhead, going through his body. And Lord Chaitanya really wanted to teach how love of Godhead is not obtained just by study, but actually by surrender to Krishna. So in the Gita we hear Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, that we should surrender to Krishna. But that's sometimes very hard to do. So Prabhupada described that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came in the mood of a devotee to show us how we can develop that surrender. And that surrender isn't just like, a military general who got defeated and he's begrudgingly surrendering. But it's actually, Krishna wants to see that surrender of our free will as an expression of love from our heart towards him, Just like he says, Man manabhava madbhato madhyaji mam namaskuru, that engage everything that you do in my service. Just worship me and become my devotee. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he wanted to show this in this manifestation, in this incarnation of Godhead. So one day, Lord Chaitanya was walking through the lanes of, I think this is actually maybe after then he met Ishvarapuri. Lord Chaitanya met Ishvarapuri, and he started his Sankirtan movement. And so then he started displaying some, affection and love of God, and started showing by example how to engage in Harinam Sankirtan. And one day he was walking through the streets of Navadvip, and he was passing by, and he heard some people singing the Vishnu Sahasranam. And they came to the name of Varaha. And Lord Chaitanya just somehow or other remembered his incarnation of Varaha, and he became in an ecstatic mood, and he started shouting, Varaha, Varaha, and running through the streets, and he ran right to Murari Gupta's home. And he came in, Varaha, Varaha, and Murari Gupta stood up, and Lord Chaitanya ran into his temple room. And in his temple room, Murari Gupta had this wonderful, beautiful water pot. And he took this water pot as a representative of Mother Earth, and he lifted it up with his arms, and he put it above his head, and then all of a sudden he manifested the form of Varaha, with tusks and his hooves. And he's standing there, and Murari Gupta's like, and he says, Murari, offer me prayers, offer me prayers. And Murari says, I cannot say anything unless you allow it. I'm a soul surrendered unto you. Even in the Vedas, they cannot, glorify you. How can a person such as me glorify you unless I have your mercy? And so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was just so pleased with him. And he said that not long ago, I came in this form to lift the earth from the darkness of ignorance, and I have come again with the purpose of giving the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, so to deliver the darkness in the hearts of the living entities. So he said, this form that you are seeing, it is my eternal form. And all of the incarnations of God, they exist eternally within me. So just like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the full-fledged personality of Godhead like Krishna, and he is the source of all incarnations. So when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes, all the avatars of Krishna also come with him. So you will see that sometimes he can't stop his just ecstatic mood when he remembers some of these incarnations. So sometimes his divinity sneaks out and manifests itself here and there because he can't just entirely cover it in his form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So one day, Lord Chaitanya went to the assembly, Murari Gupta went to Srivas Thakur's house where Lord Chaitanya was in an assembly, and he was sitting there, and Lord Nityananda was sitting beside him. So Murari Gupta went in, and he offered his obeisances to Lord Chaitanya, and then he offered his obeisances to Lord Nityananda. And Nimai said, "What are you doing? You've just transgressed etiquette." He said, "Well, I just do whatever my heart guides me because you are guiding me in my heart." He said, I don't understand what I've done wrong. He said, I will show you later. So that night Murari went home, and after he fell asleep, he actually got a divine vision in his dreams where Nitai was there, and he all of a sudden was dressed as Lord Balaram. And he had his plow and was wearing, blue dhoti, and even Anantasesha was over his head. And he turned and he smiled to Murari. And behind him was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he turned into Krishna. And he also gave him a smile, and as he was walking behind his elder brother, Balaram. And then they just disappeared from the vision. So Murari Gupta, he got up the next morning, he ran to Srivas Thakur's house, and he went in and he offered his obeisances first to Lord Nityananda, and then to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya said, "What are you doing, Murari?" He just said, "I am going where my heart leads me." He was just so grateful that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would just personally show him his, pastimes and his relationship with Nityananda. So, after he did that, Gadadhar Pandit was standing beside Lord Chaitanya, and he passed him some tambula. And so Lord Chaitanya, he chewed on it for a while, and then he took it out, and he passed it to Murari Gupta. And so Murari Gupta just popped it in his mouth. He had never experienced the taste of anything like that in his life. Yodabar I don't think he's here maybe, but if you come across any Prabhupada disciple who tasted something that Srila Prabhupada cooked, you just can't forget that taste, right? So, same thing here. The taste of this, Maha Prasad was just so thrilling that he felt this thrills of ecstasy going through his body. And Lord Chaitanya looked at him and says, "Why don't you go wash your hands, Murari? You have saliva from my mouth on your hands." He went like this. He says, "What are you doing? You're going to lose your caste." And he just was just so happy within. He didn't, take it very seriously. In fact, he was in so much ecstasy that he started dancing around. And when he went home, he was still kind of in ecstasy dancing. And he went in and his wife couldn't quite figure him out. But he said, "Please, bring me some rice." So she brought him this wonderful plate of rice and a pot of pure ghee to put however much he wants on it. And Murari Gupta started pouring ghee on this rice and holding it like this. "Eat, eat, please eat." And then he would drop it on the floor, and then he would take some more. "Eat, eat, please eat." It's like he had this vision of Lord Chaitanya and he was feeding him, but the rice would fall on the floor. And so he used all the rice and all the ghee, and his wife had to bring him some more until it was gone, and somehow Murari felt satisfied. And so the next morning early, there's this knock at the door, and he opens the door, and there's Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, "Oh, why have you come so early?" He said, "Well, I have this stomach ache." He said, "And you were a doctor, and I'm wondering if you could cure me." He said, "Well, it sounds like indigestion. What did you eat?" He goes, "What do you mean, what did I eat? You fed me so much rice with so much ghee that I have this, indigestion." He said, "I think I need some water from your water pot." And he picked up the glass that Murari Gupta had drunk half the water from, and he drank it. And Murari was devastated. He said, "How can you drink my water from my cup?" And he said that it is he said that this water is just like nectar. Anything that has touched the lips of my devotees, to me, tastes like nectar. So one day in Srivasa's home, there was a kirtan, and in ecstasy of chanting, Lord Chaitanya just manifested his four-armed Vishnu form. And he started calling out, "Garuda, Garuda, where is Garuda?" And Murari Gupta was at his house, but somehow or other he heard it. And he ran there, and he said, it's me, I'm here. Jump on my shoulders. Don't you remember? We went to the heavenly planets, and Satyabhama came along, and we defeated Indra, and we got the Parijata tree. And remember, we fought with Kartikeya, and I cut the wing off his peacock. Remember? Jump on my back. We can go wherever you like. And so they started just, running around the room. And all the family members of Srivas Pandit, they were just in ecstasy. The ladies started singing. The kirtan got more ecstatic. The ladies were ululating. And it was just a completely ecstatic thing. And then gradually Lord Chaitanya, calmed down. And they went back to their, normal selves. So Murari Gupta became a little bit worried that maybe the Lord was going to exhibit some pastimes that would put the devotees into pain. Just like, he left the gopis and went to Dwarka, and he thought, I don't know if I want to be here to see that. So he thought, best if I just give up my life. So he bought this big knife that they used to cut coconuts. So you know how hard coconuts are. So this was like a heavy-duty knife. He brought it home, and he hid it in his house, and he thought, I'm just going to kill myself, because I don't think I could go through any unhappiness of seeing any hard pastimes of the Lord. And all of a sudden, in comes Lord Chaitanya. Murari, I heard you have a knife. What do you mean I have a knife? I don't have a knife. Who told you that? I know you have a knife. And he went right to the spot where Murari hid the knife. And he said, I want that knife. He said, you should not kill yourself. I know you want to kill yourself, but you have no idea what that will do to me. And he put Murari's hand on his head, and he said, if you kill yourself and take your life, it will just be like my head is gone, because you are my life and soul, and I cannot live without you. So you must stop this idea of giving up your life. And then later on, when Lord Chaitanya exhibited his Mahaprakash pastimes in the house of Srivas Thakur, and he was satisfying the desires of all the devotees by giving them whatever it was that they wanted in their hearts and giving them benedictions. And so he also called Murari Gupta, and he said, please ask me any benediction that you would like. And he said, I don't need anything. He said, if I have your association and your service, there's nothing more than I need. He said, well, please ask me something. And Murari Gupta, I don't know if he asked for something. Maybe he asked, I just want your devotional service life after life. Whenever you incarnate, please allow me to come with your pastimes and serve your devotees. And so then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he exhibited the form of Ramachandra. And there was Sita and Lakshman there. And all of a sudden, Murari Gupta looked down, and he had a tail, and he had some fur. He says, you are Hanuman, and everybody should know this. Because all the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they were all eternal associates, but they didn't know each other. Yogamaya hid that from each other. Each person didn't know who the other person was in Krishna Leela. So Lord Chaitanya wanted to show the glories of Murari Gupta. He said, he is Hanuman, my dedicated servant. And so he understood that Murari Gupta had this great attachment to Lord Ram. And one day he even wrote Ram, Ram all over his forehead. Later on, when Lord Chaitanya went to Puri, one day in the Gambhira, he called for Murari, because all the devotees had come from Navadvip for the 4 months of the Jagannath festival. And he called for Murari, and he asked him to please come and sit down beside me. He said, no, I can't do that. I'm too fallen. Lord Chaitanya just started to glorify the devotion of Murari Gupta. And he described to everyone how previously he had explained that while Ramachandra is God, Lord Krishna is the fountainhead of all incarnations. And he is the pinnacle of worship, to worship Krishna and to chant the holy names of Krishna. He said, Murari, I think you should try and chant the holy names of Krishna. So Murari said, whatever you say, I know I must do. So he went home, and all night he was chanting Hare Krishna, but all he could see was the beautiful form of Lord Ram. He couldn't get it out of his head. And so he thought, I just can't do it. And the next day he went to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he said, I can't do it. And I don't know what to do, because I have to do what you say, but I can't do what you say. So I think there's no use carrying on in this life. But then Lord Chaitanya, he just embraced Murari Gupta. And he said, I just wanted to show everyone how sincere you are in worshiping your Ishtadevata. That when one gives one's heart to the Supreme Lord, one should never take it back. And so he described that you are very glorious in this way. And it's quite interesting because, Lord Chaitanya, his preachings are not sectarian, that if you worship, Ram, you're not acceptable. His teachings are very broad. Wherever he could see that true devotion, he accepts it. So I think he wanted to teach the world that we should not have any kind of weird sectarian, mood in our dealings with others. So there's, many things that we can learn from Lord Chaitanya's dealings with Murari Gupta. And so we can all take a few minutes just to see what can I take home and what can I utilize in my Krishna consciousness to help me advance in some way from the example of Murari Gupta or anything that we've heard today. So if anybody has any reflections or something I'd like to add or questions or want to share their take-home. What are you going to take home, Kavi?
That final point about the Ishtadeva, really nice. And being able to just, once you give in your heart, like you said, once you give in your heart, not to take it back and to just go on that.
Yeah. And you see that with some devotees and certain deities too, right? What's your take home? She's never going to sit in the front row again. Anybody else want to volunteer, or would you like to get voluntold?
So the pastime, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will come and spoil the sweet rice which Murari was going to have. So it says that Murari was like a big follower of Brahman, like everything's Brahman, everything is Shunya, like that. So by this pastime he's also proving that if everything is Brahman, then there's no difference between the sweet rice and
Urine.
shouldn't have any difference. So it's, even though it's a very graphic example, but it has a very deeper meaning that what you're following is not true, because you're saying everything's Brahman, then why don't you actually make a difference between the sweet rice and the urine? So I thought that was very strong.
Right. And that is one of Lord Chaitanya's strong preachings against Mayavad philosophy. It's a very strong point in his teachings also. Thank you for expanding on that. I thought your hand went up. I was going to ask you. Do you want to share something? See, when you ask people, I find they have so much to say. They're just like scared to say something, but everybody has something wonderful to say. Go ahead.
Should we engage them in devotion? All material desires.
They're just going to keep coming. So you answered yourself that we engage them in devotional service, and then they don't have that binding effect because we're doing it for Krishna instead of with the material motivation. And it works. And also, we really won't get rid of all of our material desires until we get the mercy of the Vaishnavas. And by their association, they will, help us, because it's by our endeavor of trying to engage everything in devotional service, and it's also by the mercy of Krishna that our desires will go away. As we keep on serving, he will be pleased with us, and he will lessen those material desires in our heart. So that's also another teaching of the Damodar month, that there's those two things, that it's by mercy and by our endeavor. Okay. Thank you very much. Right. So Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, Murari Gupta ki jai, Damodar Masa ki jai.
Sharing such a nice pastime of Murari Gupta.
Thank you for listening.
Now you're listening all the way through and catching here and while cooking. Hare Krishna. That's for you, Mahaprasad.
Oh, Mahaprasad.
Yes.
I'm with her.
She said I'm with her.
That's for you. I made sure I knew that he was going to say something, so I put Tulsi as well.
Okay.
This is Radharani's from Radharani's feet.
Okay. It's funny, this morning I was thinking, I haven't got any Maha milk sweets from Radha Gopalananda, and they're just
Reciprocation, huh?
because Bhaktivedanta Manor is known throughout the world for their devotion to milk sweets.
His old Mother Kulangana's
Yes.
legacy.
The last time we came here, she was still here, and she sent home some for Mother Janine.
Thank you for coming and thank you for everything you're doing to support the rest of the community.
Our duty is still proper. We pay him for what he's given us.
Clear transformation.
Yuta Padakamalang Sri Gurum Vaishnava Pansha
Our great misfortune that it's not being to come again.
Sri Rupam
Are you being looked after?
Chakrajatam Jagana Raghunathantam Saivam Shakaitam Savadhutam Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakanitam Didam
I'm just trying to understand the system. Yeah, I'm like, man, it's about to go.
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur
That means it's only that channel is active.
Hare 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 Krishna Krishna
See
Ram
that
Ram.
one.
Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
So it's looking like the cable.
Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasati Gaur Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare রাধা কৃষ্ণ বলো 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 রে সবাই This is a song sung by Thakur Bhaktivedanta. It is said that Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, they are walking through the streets of the Nadia town.
Just so